Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Starting on the 25th of this month, passengers on public transport such as buses must wear seatbelts if they are available. This as a bus workers' union agreed with the government's measure, but raised concerns about the possibility of increased disputes with passengers as a result of the arrangement. Well over 3 million passengers ride the city's franchise buses every day, but few are used to the habit of wearing seatbelts. A woman says she almost never puts on her seatbelt when aboard public transport, calling the safety measure inconvenient. While this woman says she wears her seatbelt to protect against traffic risks. Starting on the 25th of this month, passengers on buses, school buses, minibuses, as well as trucks must put on their seatbelts when riding the vehicles. Offenders could face a maximum fine of $5,000 and up to 3 months imprisonment. But some passengers stress they have experienced problems with seatbelts on many of the city's public transport. This man said he often has trouble pulling on his seatbelt when riding public transport, emphasizing that putting on a seatbelt is inconvenient in tight spaces like the interior of a bus. Under current legal regulations, all seats on newly registered public buses must be equipped with seatbelts. Speaking about the measure, Kowloon Motor Bus said 60% of their buses, or around 2,500 vehicles, have met the requirement. A number of bus companies also noted they will strengthen promotion for the measure via public broadcasts and posters. Citybus said more than 780 of its buses are equipped with seatbelts. Meanwhile, the spokesman for a bus workers' union said only around 20% of bus passengers currently wear their seatbelt, noting that the measure requires tighter passenger discipline. Lawmaker Ben Chen noted passengers should be aware that bus drivers have no legal obligation to remind them to wear their seatbelts. Chen said asking passengers to change their habit is not easy, adding if passengers are not understanding, it will create extra stress for the drivers. 21 batches of powdered infant and young children formula milk powder have been recalled after they were found contaminated by the Bacillus cereus bacteria. Nestle noted that its decision to recall the formula, consisting of its NAN and Wyeth products, was made out of careful consideration, but noted no reported related sickness has been received. Many consumers could not get through Nestle's telephone hotline, and it was reported some pharmacies refused to take back the products. A pediatrician reminded parents of infants to observe whether their children develop allergies when switching to other formula products. He said a sudden switch could result in infants developing symptoms such as rashes or eczema, and urged the parents to immediately seek medical help under such circumstances. The Construction Industry Council on Wednesday said that about 12,000 pieces of mainland imported scaffolding mesh will arrive in Hong Kong by mid-January. This came after the Development Bureau met with the industry to discuss the logistics of a new mechanism for netting that was implemented after the deadly Taipo blaze. Authorities requested the removal of netting at 400 buildings in the aftermath of the fire. Under the new system, contractors must provide certificates and test reports for the fire-retardant performance of the scaffolding mesh. Contractors must also send netting samples to designated laboratories for inspection once the relevant delivery have arrived in Hong Kong. Netting could only be installed on buildings after passing all the inspections. Speaking to the media after Wednesday's meeting, the Construction Industry Council said they had selected 2 manufacturers in Guangdong to provide 50,000 pieces of netting for 420 buildings across Hong Kong. The first batch of 12,000 will be delivered by January 15th. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced plans to sell Venezuelan oil in the wake of Washington's seizure of the country's president, Nicolas Maduro. He said a deal has been reached for Venezuela to transfer 30 million to 50 million barrels of crude previously sitting idle because of a U.S. blockade. The deal is a sign that the Venezuelan government under interim President Delcy Rodriguez is working with the Trump administration. Nasfi Karim with more.
We need total access.
While Maduro is facing drug trafficking charges in New York, Donald Trump is charging after Venezuelan oil. Trump has assigned U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright to execute the deal in which the oil will be taken from ships and sent directly to U.S. ports. This would divert supplies meant for China and help Venezuela avoid deeper oil production cuts. The oil will be sold at market price and the money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure that it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States, Trump said on social media. U.S. oil company Chevron, the main joint venture partner for Venezuela's state-owned PDVSA, currently controls the flow of oil from the South American country. Trump wants Venezuela to give U.S. companies more access to its oil. Last month, the U.S. imposed a complete blockade on all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving the country. Trump is reportedly set to meet U.S. oil company executives on Friday to discuss ways to revitalize Venezuela's energy industry, the infrastructure of which is largely neglected. He hopes U.S. oil companies can invest billions to revive the sector in a country believed to boast the largest oil reserves in the world. However, some oil and gas experts have reservations about Trump's plan, pointing out that Venezuela's Mare crude is highly viscous and heavy, making it difficult to extract and among the most expensive to process. In addition, renovating its aging infrastructure would be costly. Some analysts suggest that Trump's focus on Venezuelan oil stems from the fact that the U.S. primarily extracts light crude oil domestically, while Venezuela's heavy crude better meets the needs of the U.S. oil industry chain. Heavy oil also has wider military applications, such as serving as fuel for aircraft carriers. Meanwhile, the U.S. action against Venezuela has sparked concerns among Cubans that their country's economy, heavily dependent on oil imports, could suffer. Venezuela has supplied Cuba with oil at subsidized prices for decades to keep its economy running. Analysts note that Cuba has been preparing for such a scenario and will try to buy oil from other exporters. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
At least 24 Venezuelan security officers were killed in a U.S. military operation. Venezuela's military announced, bringing the official death toll to at least 56. This as Venezuelan government supporters marched to downtown Caracas, demanding the U.S. return deposed President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. Meanwhile, Republican leaders entered a closed-door session on Capitol Hill, supporting President Donald Trump's decision to forcibly remove Maduro from power, but many Democrats had questions over the U.S. military action. Tracy Furness has more.
Venezuela's Attorney General Tarek William Saab said Tuesday that dozens of officials and civilians were killed Saturday in a U.S. military operation. He said at least 24 security officers were killed, with more civilians than officials killed in the U.S. strike, adding prosecutors would investigate the deaths in what he described as a war crime and unprecedented aggression against the Venezuelan homeland. In downtown Caracas Tuesday, pro-government supporters demanded the return of seized President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. The Venezuelan Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello joined the rally and delivered a defiant speech calling the U.S. to release the couple. Cabello said, "The imperialist knows that today it is violating all international laws and their own internal laws. The imperialist knows it has a prisoner of war on its territory, kidnapped here where the majority of Venezuelans elected him to be the constitutional president of our homeland." Pushback too on Capitol Hill from Democrats.
Where do we go from here? The president says we're going to control Venezuela and that American taxpayers aren't going to have to pay a dime. Well, last time a president made that promise was when he invaded Iraq.
United Nations human rights spokesperson Martha Hurtado said Tuesday the United States intervention in Venezuela has undermined a fundamental principle of international law that no state should threaten or use force against the territorial integrity or political independence of another. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Leaders of 7 European countries reaffirmed that Greenland belongs to its people, stressing that issues concerning Denmark and Greenland must be decided solely by the two parties. This according to a joint statement released on Tuesday. Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the UK were signatories to the statement. The leaders underscored that Arctic security remains a key priority for Europe and is critical for international and transatlantic security. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said Spain cannot accept that territorial integrity of a European state such as Denmark can be threatened. The Prime Minister of Greenland, Jens Frederik Nielsen, said that Greenland is open to dialogue and discussions with the U.S., which is seeking control of the island, but they must take place through the proper channels and in respect of international law. Welcome back. Japan today criticized China's decision to ban exports of dual-use goods that can serve military purposes to Tokyo. The Chinese Commerce Ministry said in a statement that it is prohibiting the export of items that can have both civilian and military uses. Beijing says such exports could help enhance Japanese military power and comes at a time of rising diplomatic tensions between the two countries. Nazvi Karim with details.
Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara addressed reporters on Wednesday. The present measure, which targets only our country, differs significantly from international practices and is entirely unacceptable. We find it extremely regrettable, he said. He said the Japanese government has conveyed its position to the Chinese side, lodging a strong protest and requesting the withdrawal of the measure. Any individual or organization that violates the rule by transferring or providing these made-in-China products to Japanese groups and people would face legal consequences, regardless of where they are from, the Chinese Commerce Ministry said. The notice did not identify or describe specific items, but some exports, particularly in the technology sector, such as drones and navigation systems, could be adapted for military use. The decision was made to safeguard national security and interests and fulfill international obligations, such as non-proliferation, it said. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Mao Ning said on Wednesday that the country has taken measures in accordance with the law and regulations, which are fully lawful and legitimate. Relations between Japan and China worsened late last year after Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi said its military could get involved if China were to take action against Taiwan. Beijing has since been demanding that Takaichi retract her statement. The China Daily reported on Tuesday that Beijing was considering tightening the license review of rare earth exports to Japan more broadly, which could have a significant impact on major industry, particularly its automotive sector. A 3-month curb on Chinese exports of rare earth could cost Japanese businesses 660 billion yen and shave 0.11% of annual gross domestic product, according to Nomura Research Institute economist Takahida Kiyuchi. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit Ethiopia, Somalia, Tanzania, and Lesotho from today to January 12th. Wang will attend the launching ceremony of the China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges at the African Union headquarters, according to the Foreign Ministry. The visit will mark the 36th consecutive year for Africa to be the destination of the Chinese Foreign Minister's first overseas trip of the year. Iranian protesters conducted a sit-in on Tuesday at Tehran's Grand Bazaar, with security forces ultimately firing tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. The protests at the beating heart of both Iran's economic and political life represented the latest signal that the protests are likely to continue, as the country's currency fell to a record low on Tuesday. It is reported that at least 36 people had been killed in recent protests, and more than 1,200 detained by the authorities. Iran's reformist President Masoud Pezeshkian said on Tuesday that the crisis may be moving beyond the control of the officials. He said we should not expect the government to handle all of this alone, and that the government simply does not have that capacity. Ukraine's allies said they made major progress towards agreeing how to defend the country if a peace deal is struck with Russia. The country said they are ready to provide international guarantees to deter Moscow from future military actions. Plans discussed at a meeting in Paris included having the U.S. lead an effort to monitor any ceasefire. Leaders from 27 European countries and Canada, as well as U.S. representatives, plus officials from the European Union and NATO, said they would provide Kiev's frontline forces with equipment and training, and back them up with air, land, and sea support. The size of the supporting forces was not made public, and many details of the plan remain unclear. Snow, ice, and freezing temperatures have hit parts of Europe, causing treacherous traffic conditions that left at least 5 people dead in France and forcing the cancellation of hundreds of flights from one of the continent's busiest airports. Amsterdam Schiphol Airport reported some 400 flights canceled Tuesday as crews worked to clear runways and de-ice planes waiting to depart. Hundreds of flights were also canceled Monday, and more snow was forecast for the rest of the week. A software glitch combined with frozen points early Tuesday forced the National Railway Company, NS, to halt all trains during what should have been the morning rush hour. Commuters forced to drive to work also faced long journeys as snow and ice snarled traffic on some highways. Hong Kong recorded a minimum temperature of 10.9 degrees Celsius on Wednesday morning, the lowest so far this winter. The cold weather warning and the frost warning are in force. The observatory warns ground frost could occur tomorrow morning in the New Territories. Most 9 reports.
A crisp morning. Thick jackets, beanies, and scarves became essential for many residents. Despite the cooler temperature, the ice cream van in Central was still open and received customers. A man dressed his dogs in winter garments. Some passers-by said they enjoyed strolling along the harbourfront under the winter sun.
Actually, it's very pleasant if you are walking out or if you're just in the sun. It used to be much colder and used to be much colder even before, like December, November. But this time it's only in January and it's not that cold. It's manageable.
For tourists, Hong Kong was not expected to be cold.
I came to Bangkok, so I was not expecting to be cold at all. Then I had to come to Hong Kong, and it's all I have. I need to buy more. When I woke up, it was like the sensation was 5 degrees, so definitely really, really cold.
Under the persistent effect of a dry winter monsoon, most areas in Hong Kong recorded a minimum temperature below or about 10 degrees Celsius as of 4 p.m. on Wednesday. The observatory said it is windy in parts of the territory and the wind chill effect will be significant. Authorities remind residents to put on warm clothing and ensure adequate indoor ventilation. The observatory forecasts the brisk weather to remain until Friday, with temperatures ranging from 11 to 19 degrees. Members 9, TVB News.
The Transport Department announced that starting tomorrow, the on-site queuing arrangement for applying for full Hong Kong driving license without a test will be cancelled. Starting next week, an electronic queuing system will be implemented on a first-come, first-served basis. The department said applicants must obtain a queuing number through a designated website, with 300 queuing numbers available daily. The system will open at 7 a.m. every working day. Each queuing number can be used for one application by a designated applicant. Successful applicants will receive a notification via SMS and must go to the licensing office counter in Admiralty during the designated time slot to submit their application documents. The new Legislative Council will hold an election to choose its president tomorrow. The election will be conducted by secret ballot. If the votes are tied after 2 rounds, a drawing of lots will determine the winner. The candidates for the president of the Legislative Council are Starry Lee, a member of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress and a member of the DAB Party, and Ronik Chanchunying, a deputy of the National People's Congress and the Legislative representative of the finance sector. The candidates' forum will be held at 9:30 a.m. on Thursday and will last for no more than 2 hours. Both candidates will have 5 minutes to present their campaign platforms. Afterwards, there will be a Q&A session. Then a secret ballot will be held. The ballots will be counted in front of the members. The candidate with the higher number of votes will be elected. If the number of votes is tied, a second round of voting will be held. If the number of votes is still tied, the Legislative Council's secretary will draw lots to determine the winner. A man and his 11-month-old son were found today, 2 days after they were reported missing by family members. Police had earlier issued a missing person notice saying that a 37-year-old man of non-Chinese descent went missing on Monday afternoon with his 11-month-old son after leaving their home on Kwai Lam Street in Sham Shui Po. Officers at West Kowloon have been investigating the case. This afternoon, the father and son were found in Yuen Long, and the man was arrested on suspicion of neglect. 4 mice were sent along with the Shenzhou 21 crew to take part in 2 weeks of lab tests at the Tiangong space station. This as China's aerospace authorities share some recent footage of the furry astronauts. The mice previously completed this space mission at the end of last year, with the Tiangong crew saying that the rodents initially felt tense in the new environment and had trouble defecating. But after they were given a longer period to adjust to zero gravity, the mice became more flexible in their movement and could fall asleep while floating in the space station. Upon the return to Earth, a pair of the mice successfully mated and gave birth to several babies. Researchers hope they could deepen their understanding of the rodents' behavior in space and even see some of them born inside the space station in the future. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.